James chapter 3, just to remind you why we're doing these marriage moments like this. Is because I'm giving you the biblical principles of the book of James, and I wanted Kim to help bring the reality to it to a degree, and showing you that biblical principles can apply to our daily lives, particularly in the area of marriage and other areas of our life too, but she's specifically talking about marriage. Today we're continuing in this series, and I've given Kim part of my message time, and so don't worry about the time. We compensate on this end for that. But we're talking about wisdom this morning. I've titled this, Put Thought into Your Thoughts. Because last week we talked about taming the tongue and how to control the tongue. And this week what we're seeing from James is that the mind is directly controlled to the tongue. Our thoughts are directly connected to the tongue. And so when you get control of one, or get a grip on one, you can get a grip and a control on the other. So, James chapter 3, beginning with verse 13. Who is wise and has understanding among you? He should show his works by good conduct with wisdom's gentleness. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart, don't brag and deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where envy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every kind of evil. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, without favoritism and hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who cultivate peace. So, our schools are back in session right now. Kids are back in school. They're on this quest for wisdom. Teachers are back in full swing. They're on this quest for teaching. Parents are on this quest for late night homework and weekend science projects that drive you crazy. And all of this is in this quest for wisdom. And so I went to the internet and found some things here that are wisdom from children. You know, that when we say that from the mouths of babes comes truths very often, because their minds have not been polluted by the world yet. So let's see what kind of wisdom we can get from some of these kids. We got here Patrick, age 10. He says, never trust your dog to watch your food for you. And I guess these are all from the School of Hard Knocks wisdom. Michael, age 9, says, never answer your dad with the truth when he is mad and asks you, do I look stupid to you? Michael, age 7, says, never tell your mom that her new diet is not working. Randy, age 9, says, stay away from prunes. I don't know how he found that out. Nina, age 8, says, if you want your dad to get you a kitten, start out by asking for a horse. That's pretty good. Lauren, age 6, says that permanent markers are not good to use as lipstick. Joel, age 10, said, don't pick on your little sister when she's holding a baseball bat. And the last one, Eileen, age 8, this is my favorite one. She says, never try to baptize your cat. So those are pretty good. James has some pretty good advice too in this passage of scripture that we read. He says that the key to right talk, the right use of our tongue, is to have right thought. The tongue, we know, is contained in this cage of teeth and lips, and it sometimes likes to escape, and it does its damage. But James is telling us that it's not intelligence. You know, last Sunday night I gave you some practical tips on how to control the tongue and things like that, some kind of intelligent thought. And James says that it's good to have intelligence, but it's not intelligence that's ultimately going to control your tongue. It's wisdom is ultimately going to be the key to that lock on your tongue. So when I mention to you the word wisdom, what do you typically think of? You know, some people might just say, well, I think of an old guy with long white hair and a white robe. He's sitting high up on a mountain, and a young man is climbing up the side of the mountain, rock climbing to get to him, just to find out the answers to life. What is the meaning of life? James says that the wisdom he's talking about is a very practical wisdom, not some theoretical wisdom. Look back at verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? He should show his works by good conduct. And the word conduct there in that passage is really the key word. Just like we talked about at the beginning of James, that faith without works is meaningless. James comes back here and says to us that wisdom that doesn't show itself in your good deeds and wisdom that doesn't show itself in your character is also worthless. Let me give you an example. You might be the greatest armchair quarterback in the history of football, but the Titans aren't beating down your door to pay you any money right now, are they? And so you may have a lot of wisdom about football. You may have a lot of insight. You may know a lot about football and have something to offer. And it's great wisdom to have. But really, when it comes to paying the bills, it's kind of worthless, isn't it? Because you're not making any money at your armchair quarterback. Well, that's kind of what James is saying here. Having wisdom that doesn't manifest itself in any way or any part of your life is kind of worthless. It's wisdom that keeps the lock on the tongue and wisdom that helps us in those decisions that Kim was talking about. James describes in this passage some characteristics of wisdom, and tonight I'm going to be taking these characteristics and all of the ones in this passage. We're only going to look at 3 this morning. That's the ABC on your outline there. We're going to be looking at 3 here real quick, but tonight we're going to take all of those, and I'm going to show you what those are, what the opposite of that is, and then what more often we see is the perversion of these. And that's kind of what we do in church. We take these and maybe take them in a wrong direction, and it perverts these qualities a little bit. That's what we'll be looking at tonight at 6 o'clock. For this morning, letter A on your outline there, we're looking for a wisdom that is humble. A wisdom that is humble. In verse 13 again, we see, who is wise and understanding among you? He should show his works by good conduct with wisdom's gentleness. James kind of asks the rhetorical question. You know, he's good at this, at asking questions that already have the answers built in. He asks this rhetorical question, who is wise and understanding among you? And the word wise here, in its original form, means a moral insight or a skill in the practical issues of life. That's what the word wise there. And the word understanding means an intellectual perception or a scientific acumen. So what's really being said there then is, so who has moral insight and intellectual perception, and who has practical skills? Who has this scientific understanding? James says, if you do, then show it. And don't just talk about it. Wisdom is not measured by the degrees that we can have hanging on the wall, but it's measured by our deeds in the world. It's not a matter of acquiring truth and lectures, but applying the truth. It's not a matter of how many of these sermons you hear in your lifetime or how many notes you take. It's what you do with that after you leave here and after you've taken the notes. It's what we put into play in our life that becomes real wisdom, according to James. The phrase, with wisdom's gentleness, is translated humility there. Humility of wisdom, or wise meekness. You know, meekness is not weakness. Meekness is a controlled strength. And James is talking about wisdom being like that. In other words, he says a truly wise man is a humble man. And that's why I've said letter A is wisdom that is humble. So with that thought in mind, when we allow our wisdom to become polluted with the things of the world, or with arrogance, or with pride, or any of those kind of things, the humility is pushed aside. And all of a sudden we find that we were using our wisdom for selfish gain. Let me give you a couple examples of what I mean by that. Let's say, for instance, that God gave you a lot of God-given wisdom for your job, for your career, for what it is that you do in this world that makes money for you and your family and helps some organization or business or whatever it is that you do. But if you use that God-given wisdom only to push your way to the top, stepping on everybody else along the way and abusing everybody else along the way, then you have perverted that wisdom for your own selfish gain and not for the glory of God. You see what I mean by that? It becomes earthly and unspiritual. And James says all measures of evil of the devil, basically, is what he's saying. Another example, let's say that God has given you the wisdom to raise some really wonderful, well-adjusted, successful kids. They're just great kids. But if you want your kids to be great so that they're better than your sister's kids, or so that they make you look good when you're out in public, then do you see how that wisdom has become perverted and not used for God's ultimate plan and goal? One more example. God may have given you the wisdom to really reach people for Christ. Maybe He's given you the wisdom to be a great Sunday school teacher. Let's say that He's given me the wisdom to grow a church and reach a lot of people. But if my motivation is to use that wisdom just to have a bigger, better church than the guy down the street, then that wisdom has become perverted and become opposite of what God is looking for. I'd be interested in doing my own kingdom rather than my own empire rather than the kingdom of God. A lot of times people who are motivated to acquire wisdom find that they're motivated for envious reasons or selfish reasons, or because they want to be in control, or because they want to have everything in order for their own good, for their own life, or they want everyone behaving around them to make them look better. And James warns in verse 16, go back to 16 and look, that the opposite happens in your life. When you're trying to control all this, when you're trying to make all this happen out of your own earthly wisdom, the opposite of what you want can actually happen. In verse 16, for where envy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every kind of evil. So it backfires on us, basically. Letter B on your outline, we're looking for a wisdom that is gracious. A wisdom that is gracious. In verse 14 again, if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart, don't brag and lie in defiance of the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, sensual, and demonic. For where envy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every kind of evil. So true wisdom, godly wisdom, doesn't have any room in it anywhere for bitter envy or selfish ambition or working for our own selfish gain. Jesus addressed this in a story that He told that's recorded in the book of Matthew. You remember the story? It's a common parable of where a farmer went out and went down to the local market to hire some men to work for him one day because it was harvest time. We're coming up on harvest time around here, and this would play out around here perhaps. The man goes to the market, hires some men early in the morning, about 6 a.m., says, come and help me harvest all day, and I will pay you well a full day's pay. And so the guys go with him and begin to work. Around 11 a.m., the farmer sees that he needs a little bit more help, so he goes back to the market. There's still some guys standing around. He offers them a job for the rest of the day. I'll pay you well if you'll come help me get the harvest. And they do. Jesus goes back to the market 2 more times after that and gets more men. At the end of the day, it's an hour before quitting time. The man goes back to the market and hires some more workers and says, I need you to come work for me for an hour and I'll pay you well for that hour. And they do. So the hour passes and the end of the day is there. So all the men who have worked at different times of the day come and they stand on the line. And the farmer goes to each man and he begins to pay them. He goes to the guy who's worked the least amount of time. This guy probably didn't hardly work an hour. He goes to him and pays him a full day's pay. Well, the guys at the end of the line who've been working since 6 a.m. say, oh wow, we've hit the lottery. I mean, this guy is fixing to just load us up. And the farmer goes down the line and he pays everybody, even the guys who've been working since 6 a.m., the same amount of money. 1 full day's pay. And those guys at that end of the line are furious. You would pay them the same amount to work 1 hour that you would pay us to work 12 hours in the grueling hot sun? And the farmer just said back to them, what I gave you is what we agreed to. That if you would work for me today, that I would give you a full day's pay. And I am honoring my word. And so we would think, well, what kind of wisdom is that? Well, that's the wisdom of God. That's the wisdom of, I'm glad that the Lord does not pay me what I deserve. Because if He paid me what I deserve, I'd be dead. Amen or okay? Amen. So He pays us out of mercy. He pays us not what we deserve, but what He wants us to have because of His mercy. In verses 15 and 16, He talks about envy and strife. I think those guys at the end of the line down there had a little bit of envy over these guys who worked for 55 minutes and made the same money they made for 12 hours. James goes back and talks about envy and strife, and he says, envy and strife in your life is a pretty clear indicator that your wisdom that you're working with is not from above. Now that was worth chewing on for just a second. So I don't want to just run past that too fast. Envy and strife are pretty clear indicators that the wisdom you're working with is not from above. Amen. It's earthly. It's unspiritual. It's natural. It's sensual. It's even, he says, demonic or of the devil. Envy and selfish ambition. Now, I'm not talking about healthy ambition. You know, healthy ambition makes us better. It makes us work harder. It makes us get education. It makes us do things in a better way. So healthy ambition and motivation are okay. But James is talking about a selfish ambition or this hostile rivalry. Kim mentioned in her part about marriage is not having this rivalry against each other. It amazes me how many couples are so competitive about which one makes the most money or which ones the kids like the most or which one can do this or that. It's unhealthy, that kind of hostile rivalry in a marriage or in any other relationship. And James is saying that it shouldn't be there. It only produces disorder, confusion, and every evil practice. So a truly wise person does not seek self-glory, does not seek this ill-gotten gain, but they're gracious, full of mercy. Letter C. The kind of wisdom we're looking for is peaceable. It's peaceable. Look at verse 17. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, without favoritism and hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Now those are the phrases we're going to be looking at tonight and kind of dissecting that whole section right there tonight. But on your worship guide, let me just give you those blanks and we'll give you these in rapid fire, not without comment. We'll be commenting tonight. But this wisdom that we're looking for that comes from heaven is 1, pure, 2, peace-loving, 3, gentle, 4, compliant. I'll give you these again if you're getting behind. 5, full of mercy. 6, full of good fruits. 7, without favoritism. 8, without hypocrisy. Let me give you those again since we still don't have our projectors working from the lightning strike. It'd be easier if we had that up there for you to see. 1, pure. 2, peace-loving. 3, gentle. 4, compliant. 5, full of mercy. 6, full of good fruits. 7, without favoritism. 8, without hypocrisy. So he lists all of these things. Like I said, we'll be talking about these tonight. But look at verse 18 because he goes back again into the list and picks out one out of all those things. In verse 18 he goes back and picks out peace, saying that it's the seed that is sown and it yields a harvest of righteousness. There's this extra emphasis, extra thought, that a truly wise man is a man of peace. A truly wise man is a man of peace. Much like the lady who learned to pray for her husband. She had a hard time dealing with her husband. He was kind of hard to live with, and so she had learned how best to pray for him. She prayed, "Dear Lord, I pray for love to forgive my wretched husband. I pray for patience to deal with his despicable moods. I pray for wisdom to understand his idiotic ways more. But Lord, I do not, and please do not, give me strength, for I fear that I shall beat the snot out of him if you do." Amen. What makes wisdom that comes from above is this peace-loving. It's considerate. It's submissive. Kim talked about submitting to each other in marriage. We guys love that part about wives submit to your husband. Get on, come on, woman. We like that part, that part of the sermon. But then there is the part of where we're supposed to love our wives as much and more than we love ourselves. That would change everything right there. A wife would not have a problem submitting to a husband if he loved her more than he loved himself. Wisdom's not only in the hands and feet, but it's also in the ears. Wisdom that's true is able to listen and to hear. A lot of times we think that a wise person has to have all the answers. But really, a wise person has to listen for the answers. Remember, James talked a lot about listening, speaking less and listening more. A wise person knows how to listen. They don't necessarily have all the answers, but they know how to listen for the answers around them from the Spirit, from the Lord, from His Word, and discern what is right and what is good. You know, there's a big, big gap between being smart and being wise. A big, big gap between being smart and being wise. That's nice if you have both. You know, if you can be smart and wise at the same time, that's pretty nice. But I'll take wisdom over smart any day. Smart can be learned in a book. Smart can be learned in a class. Smart can be read on Google. You can get on Wikipedia and get smart about anything you want to just about today. But wisdom is something that comes from the heart of God. It's something that's birthed into a person as their relationship in Him grows. You know, my little old daddy, I think this Tuesday would have been y'all's 58th anniversary. I've got a picture of him here. He had an 8th grade education. I don't know how many of you knew that or not. He dropped out. He came from a country family. They lived out in farming area. He was the oldest of 8 kids. And you know, back in that day, he was born in the 30s. Back in that day, that's just what you did. If you even made it to 8th grade. And then you got out there and you helped work the farms and helped feed the family and raise the kids and all that kind of stuff. So he didn't have a whole lot of education smarts. He was intensely wise in his raising of me and Steve and his relationship with my mother and his relationship with this church. And this picture I've got is of him standing in this pulpit as a much, much younger man. I don't know what he's doing there. I don't know if he's teaching or preaching or singing or making announcements. I don't know what he's doing there. But he's in this pulpit behind this desk right here. And I wish we had the screen where I could show it to you, but I'll leave it here on the Lord's Supper table and you can take a peek at it if you'd like to see it. But his wisdom came from his relationship with the Lord. His wisdom came from the fact that every morning when I finally dragged my lazy self out of bed, he was already sitting there in the living room with one lamp on reading his Bible every single morning of his life that I recall. We need godly wisdom to raise our families, to have a reasonable contribution to this planet, to make good decisions in this church, to just be who God wants us to be. We need wisdom. I hope to help you with that a little bit more tonight. For right now, I'm going to ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes with me. We're going to sing a song of invitation. I'm going to pray, and then after I pray, we're going to stand and sing. And this song is your opportunity to respond to whatever God might be laying in your heart. Maybe you just want to spend a minute praying about wisdom, asking God for spiritual wisdom. Maybe you have some decision you need to come share with me. Maybe you want to come to this altar and just pray. Some of our prayer warriors can gather with you and pray with you. Whatever your need is this morning and whatever God might be laying on your heart, I pray that you would be wise in your response to the Lord this morning. Father God, in this time of invitation, I pray that you would speak. I pray that you would do what you do best, and that's to change hearts and lives. Now, Lord, we come to you in this time of invitation and ask you to speak, to stir us to action. And I pray that in your holy name. Amen. Let's stand together.